minutes. Our third speaker is Professor Mike Adebamowo. Mike Adebamowo is an architect, sustainable architecture specialist, and professor of architecture with interest in thermal comfort, architectural science, and energy use in buildings. His research work focuses on sustainable architecture, energy use in buildings, and environmental performance of buildings. He holds BSc and MSc degrees in architecture from the University of Ife, now Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and a Master of Architecture degree with distinction from the University of Lagos. He also holds a PhD in Geography and Planning from the Lagos State University, LASU. Professor Mike Adebamowo joined the service of the University of Lagos in 1995 and became a professor in 2015. He has served the university in various capacities, including head of Department of Architecture, and is the immediate past dean of the Faculty of Environmental Sciences. The erudite scholar has over 40 publications in national and international journals, and one of his publications won the Best Paper Award of Emerald in 2018. As a consulting architect, he has designed and supervised several building projects, including the remodeling of the Faculty of Arts building, University of Lagos, RNA City Hotel in Ikeja, and the Citadel Church building, Oregun, Lagos. He's a member of several professional associations, including the NCEUB in the UK and ASHRAE. He's a fellow of the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Pollution Mitigation, and a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Architects. He has supervised over 300 master's and 13 PhD students successfully and managed research grants. He will be speaking on the role of adaptive education training in shaping minds who are ready to tackle the adverse effects of COVID-19 and the climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome our third speaker, Professor Mike Adebamowo.
Okay, we can't hear you, sir. I think you are still muted.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, sir. Yes, we can.
Great. I'd like to thank ATO Architects for organizing this lecture and also for inviting me to speak on architectural education, adapting to the future. And I'll just go straight by sharing my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
All right. Oh, thank you. It took some time. The aim of this lecture really is to investigate how architectural education in Nigeria can actually respond to the adverse effects of climate change and COVID-19 with view of adapting to the future. And that will also take me to speak about sustainable architecture, which is the art and science of designing and creating well-maintained buildings that are energy efficient, healthy, comfortable, and flexible in use. And there have been many recent movements in architecture that have tried to address the two sides of the equation on sustainability. That's technological innovation, as we have seen in the presentation of Adifoshi, and social provision. But unfortunately, most times we are tilted into either to one side or the other. But there is a need for the combination of the two, because sustainability essentially, or sustainable architecture, will have no moral validity unless these two sides of the equation are addressed. And the key to this is in education, in the training, of professional architects. And architectural education actually covers the provision of knowledge regarding architectural design, enabling individuals to understand the cultural, intellectual, the historical, the social, economic, and environmental aspects of architecture. And at university level, the NUC and ACON regulates the training of architecture. And currently we have 2-tier degree structure, which we have been operating for over 4 decades. The first tier leads to the award of the bachelor degree, and the second tier to the award of master degree in architecture. But architectural education essentially is committed, to high quality of professional education aimed at producing architects that have understanding in solving technical problems and environmental problems, as well as applying the knowledge to tackle and coordinate other related professional inputs. And I'm glad to hear in Azan's presentation now, it's not just all about design, but the architect that is being trained must be well blended or well-rounded and grounded in a way that will be able to coordinate the entire process of design and construction, and not just really about design. And this is carried out in architectural schools under 8 teaching modules. Design skill module 1, under which we have architecture, landscape, urban design, all the studio works. We have the communication skill module 2 in terms of graphics communication, and under which also currently we're talking about all kinds of software programming that we could also use in communicating. And the module 3 is in historical and theoretical studies in architecture. Module 4 in building construction and technology, under which you have building materials and components, structures, and all of that has to do with building construction. And module 5 on humanities and arts, the research inputs into architecture, environmental psychology, or the environmental impact analysis, and the studies courses relating in this area under this module. And module 6 on environmental services or environmental control system, under which we have climatology, urban climatology, building climatology, architectural science, building services, air conditioning, because all this, the training is required in this area. And module 7 in physical science and information technology, which is really huge now. And module 8, management studies and entrepreneurship studies. And talking about the future, something that remains constant really is the change. And change, either voluntary or imposed, can take place at different levels, multiple levels, either individual, organization, societal, global. And we must all prepare for change. And in the built environment, the contemporary issues of climate change and COVID-19 have actually complicated the change dynamics, even as we have it. And climate change and COVID-19 cannot be treated in isolation. And that's why I've developed here in this study, STEEP analysis, STEEP being an acronym, S standing for social, T for technology, E for environment, E for economy, and P for politics and legal. But our focus here is on the environment, in being able to use this to analyze the Nigerian built environment. Because as we prepare for the future, nobody can know for certain what the future will be, but we can at least envisage it in order to be prepared for it, because the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. So the focus of this lecture is on the environment and how architectural education can respond to the change dynamics of the environment, although environmental issues essentially cannot be treated in isolation. So in preparing for change, there is a need for us to peer into the future. Some studies have actually shown that the inevitable rural and urban migration is due to climate change. But most studies have indeed really confirmed that the rural and urban migration is chiefly on for economic reasons rather than for climate change. And this is important, and it's also instructive of these findings. And that's why you have that depressed economies and unstable repressive governments will rather seek better standard of living, job opportunities in urban centers and thriving countries. And that's what is responsible for the brain drain as we have in Nigeria. And that's why it is important for us to be able to advance solutions into, these problems as we peer into future. And the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that the real world is fragile, and there is a need for us to prepare for future, even for worse things. Now we are having various, variants of COVID-19, Delta variant, Omicron, and who knows what other variants will come in the future. So I have this chart. I believe you can see this chart in preparing for future and in terms of the adaptive education that will be based. We need to also understand the past. We find out that between 14th and 20th centuries, there had also been an outbreak of infectious disease. We remember the bubonic plague. We have tuberculosis, we have typhoid, we have cholera, we have polio, we have Spanish flu. And what was the response then? Essentially, it was architectural in terms of urban renewal, in terms of sanitary reforms, in terms of building and housing reform, in being able, to address, the pandemic as it were then. So right now, the lessons from COVID-19 pandemic, we can actually build lessons here by stepping back into nature and stepping forward into technology. Stepping back, we need a combination of this really in order to be able to address this issue of pandemic. In stepping back into nature, we'll be able to consider issues that have to do with nature. Will you still be able to see my screen? I can't see the screen any longer. I think it's a network.
Yeah, maybe you want to reshare it. I don't know.
Oh, I see. So, okay, I will reshare it, but I will just quickly explain for the sake of time that we step back into nature, okay, and we step forward into technology. As we step back into nature, we look at urban approaches in solving this problem, in addressing this problem in terms of expanding horizontally, fewer, density, cities, decentralization, urban farming, fewer cars now, more cycling and walking as we have, and architectural approaches in self-sufficient strategies, refocusing on green spaces, low-rise buildings, better air quality, okay, and step forward into technology, as Azan had rightly, presented it in modular construction, lean construction, adaptive reuse, lightweight and adaptable structures, hygienic building materials, ability to work from home, that's digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and touchless technologies, and where robots and humans can easily interact. That is stepping into future, that's technology. But I believe sincerely that our solution is in the combination of the two, into nature and technology. And we need to bring this together, even as we look at the goals of COP26, which are essentially for net zero, and countries are called to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and to keep global temperature, below 1.5 degrees centigrade. And we can see all the other goals as are shown here. And in reaching this goal, it means we must phase out coal, we must have more renewable technologies, we must reverse deforestation by 2030, electrical vehicles as we have. And in achieving these net zero emissions, training also have to be in terms of the design of buildings, location, orientation, and form, which occupies the large band in this graph, and the lowest one has to do with use. So you can see from this chart that rather than relying more on appliances and on gadgets, it all begins by getting the design right in terms of location, orientation, the form, and the fabric elements. And it is through this we can essentially reduce energy use in buildings, just like the same in achieving the 17 sustainable goals, out of which 10 will relate directly with the focus of our discussion today. So the future of architectural education is quite interesting. We know it's not static. Environment is not static. Nature is dynamic. Therefore, architectural education is expected also to be dynamic. If we take, lesson from bioclimatic design of Victor Olge in designing, buildings with climate, we found out that even in this current nature, or beyond bioclimatism, the origin of bioclimatic approach itself can be traced to vernacular and traditional buildings. And that's why I am advocating for the combination of nature and technology in solving this problem and in training and looking into the future. And the same thing we have today as the sustainable architecture, green architecture, regenerative architecture, biophilic architecture, biomorphic architecture, biomimicry, smart architecture, biotech, and high-tech architecture can all be put, into one box as to relating nature with technology. And again, we have with us different softwares that have been developed, and all these softwares put together, Ecotech, Architect, Revit, SketchUp, all transiting from CAD to BIM, to BIM, and that's what we have. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to conclude quickly by attempting to answer some 5 pertinent questions and also quickly present to you a project, which we have just concluded that peeps into the future. The first question is how students are prepared for the unpredictable future and the challenge of climate change. And I will simply answer by saying, yes, our students are being prepared, by virtue of what is currently in the modules, in the course and in the teaching, emphasis being placed on occupant safety, health and comfort, on architectural science, on sustainability. The second question, it will be that what are the extant modules in preparing these students for climate change? And that in all those 8 modules that I've enumerated, it only means that from time to time, we look at the contents of the courses, and improve on those contents, which we do also from time to time, also applying further innovation and findings from research and technology in improving even the course delivery, curriculum, and the way and manner these courses, are being taught. The third question has to do with what about the degrees, whether there will be any change or not. I believe very sincerely that the 2-tier degree structure for training architects will still be the best option. However, as I've said, curriculum is being changed from time to time, and there are higher and professional degrees in MArch, in PhD architecture, which I would rather prefer, that architects only will have PhD in architecture, but others will have PhD landscape architecture, PhD in architectural studies, as we have in reputable institutions abroad. And the fourth question will be, what will be the role of the institute, in all this? And the role is clear. What ATO architects are doing, ACON to collaborate with academia too in CPD lectures. I'm glad to see that what we are doing today too, at some points, some CPD points, that is the way to go. And other organizations, especially NGOs, today in UNILAG, yesterday we met with Arcline BI Design Foundation, and they are partnering with the United Nations to mark 2022 as International Year of Glass. You'll be amazed to see the unlimited possibilities of the use of glass as a building material, a sustainable building material. And the final question as to how does practice dovetail into teaching? Give me some few minutes in answering this question, because that will help us with the design portfolio and the project that we have just concluded that I'll quickly show us now, which is the Citadel project. And we'll see that this is an animation. This was done about 5-6 years ago in terms of the design, about 6 years ago, but it's currently standing now. And we'll see the work of the animation compared, to the live building as the building is standing. But what is interesting here is in the design, the flexibility, the adaptability, the sustainability, and the approach to the design, a church design. Essentially, the worship center, the auditorium, over 5,000 seated, capacity. But beyond that, there are other facilities like classrooms, okay, that are used on Sundays for Sunday school teaching. But between Monday and Friday is a full-fledged school going on there. That's the kind of adaptability that we're talking about. This facility functions 24/7, not just on service day, 24/7 all throughout the days, 7 days a week, because all facilities in terms of training, you could also find that youth center, youth connect center, health facilities in terms of the swimming pool, the gym, the sauna, as we will see right in this animation. So essentially, we're saying that as we look into future, even in terms of in analyzing the client's brief, analyzing and synthesizing to come up with a design, we have to prepare for future in terms of adaptability, in terms of flexibility, and in reducing carbon emissions in all what we're doing, and engaging in softwares and in technology in being able to solve the problems of the future. And students have to be engaged in this all through in terms of training. And that is why even the students are involved in this practice. Where we are seeing right now is an atrium within that same facility where you have, a greenhouse effect. And this is showing part of it in terms of the library, the bookshops, and facilities that can be used by the community. Because I believe essentially that our buildings must be energy efficient, it must be community inclusive, socially relevant, and it must be ecologically balanced. And in putting this together is how we can address all these, for the future. And this is the reality on ground. That is the animation, and this is reality. And you can see that there is really no difference between that which was proposed and that which eventually had been executed here. So in going forward, in closing, I would like to say, we could see that even before pandemic came, this design had been done. Now we are facing with pandemic. We don't know what else will happen again. But our design as architects ought to be trained in a way that we will not panic. This will not come as a surprise, because essentially design has been done in order to take care of these future eventualities. I really want to thank you for the opportunity given again to present this, and thank you for listening.